Welcome to Champion Stepdad Podcast. We are exploring the unique role of stepdads and how to apply performance psychology skills to become better father figures and role models. My name is Neil Wadier. I'm a 16-year stepdad. I'm also a resilience trainer and a performance consultant, encouraging you to join the Champion Stepdad Facebook group, get involved, and grow your band of brothers. Recently, I've been focused on emotional regulation, which is important for optimal performance in any performance domain. You can imagine an athlete who has to be emotionally under control during their competition, a performing artist who's going up on stage and has to be ready to perform in front of anywhere from hundreds to thousands, business professionals. This is no different for parents, especially step parents. Your role as a stepdad is inherently complicated. And so is your ability to become more aware of and effectively regulate your emotions will help you tackle all the challenges you face. While a lack of emotional control is almost guaranteed to magnify every issue. Now, I do want to take a minute before I jump into the meat of today's podcast episode to clarify, because a lot of times there's certain buzzwords, right? Emotional intelligence is a big one for the last several years. And when I get into talking about it, sometimes I'll interchange emotional regulation and emotional control. And I wanted to clarify what I'm trying to get across, because sometimes when you think of control, you think of almost like a remote in your hand and you're just dictating everything that's going on, whether you're controlling your TV or a remote control car or an airplane. And that's not what I'm trying to get across. Emotions and thoughts are not something, they're not, you're not able to just flip them like a switch. I think we can all agree on that, if you find yourself upset about something, or you find yourself sad about something, you can't just flip a switch and be like, okay, I'm going to be happy now, or oh, I'm angry, I'm just going to let that go. Like, that's what people try to do. But in order to do that, there's the process of making it through those emotions or processing those emotions effectively, to allow the thoughts to cycle through your brain so that you can let go of those things. Suppression of emotions and thoughts is not processing, and that will only cause problems down the road. So when I refer to emotional control, I'm talking more about the regulation of, right? It's like water. It's, unless you put up a huge dam, it's hard to control water. And so that's why I want you to think about it. Instead of controlling, it's more of a regulated. Like, how can you send it the way that you want it to make it more effective and it causes less damage, right? I think that's kind of a good analogy when I think about emotional regulation. It's gonna come down the hill, right? Here comes that anger, or here comes that sadness or depression or whatever it is that you feel. And how do I channel that so that it doesn't cause damage, and I can get back to what I was trying to do, or I can get to a better place. I don't want you to be the person you were before. I want you to grow and thrive, right? Learning how to process emotions and learning mental skills is about growing and thriving and being a more mentally strong person, being a more emotionally connected person, connected to your spouse and your children and your friends and people that you're interacting with, your environment. So I don't want you to confuse, and I try to take the word control out of my vocabulary, because I found it being confusing to just the conversation in general. So I try to talk more about emotional regulation, because regulation includes the processing and the understanding that if you were to go sit down on your back porch or your front porch or your campsite or your dinner table or whatever it is, and you just sit there and don't interact, don't talk, just sip on your whatever drink you're having and just let your thoughts and emotions flow, we're going to be pretty surprised about what comes up, because our brain just goes and goes and goes. Sometimes thoughts pop into our head, sometimes emotions pop into what feels like our chest, of, things that we didn't expect. And sometimes they're pretty weird, like almost to the point of that's kind of unnerving that I actually had that thought, but that's just how our brains work. And so we have to be aware that those things happen. So the control part, I'm not telling you to just have absolute control and to shut things down and to just be happy. Like that's not how things work. I'm asking you to become more aware of what you think and feel, and then understand why you think and feel that way. If it's an apparent event or complication or situation that you experienced, and then you can more intelligently and more the word keeps aggression keeps coming in, but that's actually what I'm going to talk about later. You can more effectively, that's what I'm trying to say, more effectively address those situations after you've had a moment to process through those thoughts and those emotions. I'll do this a lot with Cindy when we have conflict. In my youth, I was raised in a very aggressive, authoritarian household. My parents yelled a lot. There was a lot of conflict, not just with my parents, but with just, it seemed like everybody in our life. Like I just recognized there was conflict everywhere. And you that kind of goes along with that idea of you train your brain and you see more often the things that you focus on. And so there was probably a lot of really good things that happened in my youth, but I most remember conflict and aggression. I saw fights, I saw anger, I heard yelling, just a lot of things that were really counterproductive to a youth, an adolescent, having that loving, protected, safe space where they can grow up and learn. And I feel like a lot of that was in my youth. The more I go through these psychology programs, I'm realizing that my tendency to be withdrawn, even though I'm an extrovert, that's a whole nother subject, tend to be withdrawn, tend to be have low self-esteem, those kind of things. As I was all the way through high school, I realized that was a result of the environment that I was raised in, because there was a lot of aggression, there was a lot of lack of empathy, there was no sympathy, there was, go outside and play. There wasn't, we're going to sit down together as a family and play a game, and we're going to interact and have this loving, connected family. We didn't have that. We were, told to go outside and play. We were told to go watch TV. We were told to, go do this and that. And there wasn't a lot of interaction. And there wasn't a lot of opportunity to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, because mistakes were all often met with frustration, disappointment, anger, and aggression. So trying to now, as an adult, not only work through those things so that I can be more effective, but also be a more understanding with, my adult stepchildren, or my adult children who are in their 20s, and my younger stepchildren who are 7 and 9 years old, trying to change my perception of how a child should be raised, or how could more effectively be raised. And that goes everything from my interaction with them to my response to them being frustrated or sad or hungry, and even to the point where sometimes they're disrespectful. Do I really need to drop the hammer on them because that's how I was raised? And I got to be very aware of those things and how that affects me, and therefore affects the people around me. And I'm not at all number one, I'm not a helicopter parent, and number two, I am not a snowflake, everything's got to be self-esteem type parent. So just get that out of your mind. I am not at all like that. I'm all about reality. I'm not necessarily a harsh reality type, but I'm like, hey, we got to figure this out. This is what's going on. Let's deal with it. And even some of that, I got to take a step back and let the kids figure it out. Um, let the kids have some space to make some mistakes and not feel threatened. We're scared that they're going to make a mistake and they're going to get their head chomped off for it. So having that emotional regulation, that emotional intelligence, that emotional awareness, so that you can more effectively process what you think and feel, so you can be more effective as a spouse, as a parent, as a step parent. Because the more tuned in that you are, the more you can handle all these subjects that we talk about. Whether you're talking about complications directly with the stepkids, or complications between the stepkids and the biological children, your spouse, differences in opinion on raising kids, the biological father, extended family, all these different things that go on, the more emotionally aware and emotionally connected you are, the easier you're going to find you can manage these situations. And I'm not trying to say it's going to be easy. It's never simple, right? This is all very, very complicated. But the more emotionally aware you can be, the better under control you're going to be. And therefore, you're going to be able to connect with other people and have effective conversations. And effectively, and that's the strong word, effectively. What's the most effective way that you can deal with it for the best desired outcome that you want? I mean, it's essentially what we're talking about is I want to be emotionally connected and have a good relationship with my stepchildren, have a good relationship with my spouse. And I want to raise these young children into productive adults who are growing into who they are. They have biological characteristics, whether I like them or not, that's who they are. And I don't want them to be ashamed of that. I also don't want them to be stuck in that, meaning I want to show them opportunities and help them. But that involves a trusting relationship. And if they're afraid of making mistakes, or they're afraid of me and my volatility, that I don't understand my emotions, and therefore at any moment I could be, one day frustrated, one day happy, the next night drunk. That's the house that I grew up in. I never knew what to expect when I came home from school. I never knew what to expect when I came home from playing with my friends. I might have had a great day and I walk in the door and I'm getting blasted for no reason. I don't want that in my house. So I meant that to take like 60 seconds, but it's important. It's important to understand what's the point of what we're doing here. This is not to, sit in a drum circle and sob and cry. And I'm not trying to say that's a bad thing if that's what you like to do. That's just not what I do. What I'm talking about is how can we take who you are and help you be a better version of yourself. And again, that's buzzwords that in the coaching industry, like, want to help you be a better version of yourself. I got it. Like, sometimes those kind of things are annoying, but that's essentially what we're trying to do. I want to help you be more mentally strong. I want you to be more emotionally connected so that you can have better relationships, so you can enjoy your life and you can manage the stress. And that's one more thing, is stress is not an external force. Stress is 100% internal. So when I say stress management, I'm not talking about managing the things that cause you stress, because we're not going to do anything about those things. Driving in church, there's always going to be traffic. What are you going to do about it? Managing stress is about what you can do internal so that you can be better prepared to deal with driving in traffic, to deal with the emotionally abusive biological father, because you can't change that person. That is outside of your control. It is within your influence, but it is outside of your control. So when we talk about emotional regulation and stress management, we're talking about what is within you and what is directly within your influence. And most of the time, it's pointing straight back at you and what's going on in your brain and your body. So we talk about this role of a stepdad. You've stepped into an inherently complicated role. Let's not make it any worse by allowing yourself to continue the shit that doesn't work. Let's get better at this. And so speaking of that, the one specific thing I wanted to talk about today was anger. And as I'm progressing through this Masters of Performance Psychology program, I'm hitting these real interesting conversations. And part of being in a master's program, as you would imagine, there's a lot of research papers that you have to read. And sometimes I read them all, sometimes I just take out the highlights. But the idea of anger is, and this is a very general statement, boys and men are encouraged to express anger and aggression through aggressive sports, bringing this mentality to careers that, it's me against the world, or, me against the other people, and I got to get the promotion, and, I got to be aggressive and assertive and all these things. It brings, sometimes bringing aggression into the family. It can be difficult to find the balance, or to even take a step back and say, you know what, I don't always need to be in charge. Like, why am I fighting this battle? Right now, as I'm going through school and I'm trying to start a business, I'm essentially a stay-at-home dad. I'm supposed to be ashamed of that? No, that's fucking awesome. I love it. I go on some of these dad groups, and people are complaining about, and if you want purpose and you want to go get a job, then go get a job. But don't come back at me because I talk about how awesome my life is, that I get to be a stay-at-home dad, and tell me, quit being a bum, go get a job. Fuck that. Man, I love being a stay-at-home dad. I mean, my kids are coming home. The stepkids are coming home. Actually, I got to wrap this up pretty quick because they're going to be walking to the door any minute now, early, because they get early release on Wednesday. And that means that before Cindy gets home from work in 2 hours, like, I get 2 hours with the kids, just me, just them and me. We get to hang out, go play Call of Duty with one of them. The other one, sit and watch whatever weird show on Netflix that he likes to watch. Like, why is that so horrible? I think it's amazing. So getting into this idea of anger, the one thing that I really wanted to talk about is there's been this idea for a long time, as long as I can remember, this idea of catharsis. And catharsis is the act of releasing and providing relief from strong or repressed emotions. And I most often think about punching, kicking, yelling to release anger, right? And it seems logical. If you take out your aggression on something besides the object of your anger, you'll be better able to deal with the person or the situation. And that's the problem with common sense, because it seems common, right? But it's actually totally counterproductive. In the research that I've done and what I've seen is they've looked at not just behavior and repeated behaviors, but actual functional MRIs of the body, or of the brain, where, the electrical currents, and not getting into all that stuff, the brain does what the brain does, right? There's a lot of automatic responses, and your neural pathways determine what you do, right? And the stronger those neural pathways are, that's where you get habits. So you get better at what you repeatedly do. And so essentially what they found is your expression of anger, even when directed at an inanimate object that is not the object of your aggression, does not make you less angry. Instead, it increases your anger. You might feel better in the moment, but the actions reinforce the link between anger and aggression. So you get angry, so you go hit even if it's a punching bag. Like, I'm not even talking about like kick the dog or, domestic violence. I'm just talking about if you go out in the garage or you go to the gym and you're angry and you take out your anger by hitting a punching bag, you are reinforcing your anger. You're going to expend some energy and you might feel better in the moment, but you get better at what you repeatedly do. And so therefore, every time that you rage and you show physical aggression tied to anger, you're reinforcing that connection. Now, there's a couple things about this. Number one, people say, well, what about going to the gym? I go to the gym, I feel better. Yes, because number one, you're expending energy and therefore you're bringing it down. And maybe that's going to help you think things through. The problem, if you carry your thoughts into your workout, there has to be a separation that you're going to the gym to work out for its own merit. You're not going to the gym and carrying your anger with you. That idea of reliving that moment over and over again. It's you can't sit there and process this anger as you're expending energy. That is what's going to link the two. And it's going to be hard to separate those two down the road. You're reinforcing the link between anger and aggression. So take some time, whatever it takes to, tell yourself you're going to the gym and you're doing this thing. Do some mental games. I did this with a client recently. He said, well, how can I quickly change what I'm thinking about? Well, here, try this mental game sometime, because if you're ruminating, and the last couple of minutes I've been trying to think, what's that word? So you're ruminating. Ruminating means that you're just constantly thinking about something. And when you ruminate, it becomes bigger and bigger. So even though it might have even just been a little thing that made you angry, the more you ruminate on it, the bigger problem it becomes in your mind. It's not a bigger problem. The event is still just the event, but you've made it into this big thing because you relived it over and over again. So we were talking about, he says, well, when I go to the gym, I want to separate the two. So how can I do that? Because the more I think about it, right? So try this. Count backwards from 100 by sevens. It's not an easy task, right? If I say count to 100 by twos, or count to 100 by fives, or even count backwards from 100 by fives, you're like, okay, that's easy, I can do that. But if you do it in something like weird number like 3 or 7 or 13, count back from 100 by 13, you have to stop and think, because that's not easy. And go all the way from 100 backwards by 7 or 13 or whatever that number is. That's really weird, and it's kind of off, and it's not easy to do. By the time you get down to 0, you will have thought so hard about counting back from 100 by 7 that your mind is going to be completely off that. And even after you get done, you're going to say, well, I did this because I need to get my mind off of that. There will be enough separation that you will now be able to move on and do what you want to do. And you're going to have that separation between the two. And there's the boys. What's up, guys? Hi. So anger and aggression is reinforced by your physical habits. If you want to separate your anger and aggression effectively, you need to have a mental separation between the two. Go punch the bag, go exercise, do whatever it is that you want to do, but make sure that you're not ruminating on what caused you to be angry. When you get done, you're going to have expended a whole bunch of energy, and you might be able to go back and think about that thing again after the separation. It's a really important mental skill. And yes, you got a lot of pent up energy. In physics, they talk about potential energy. It's the greatest form of energy, or something like that. I'm not a physics guy. Anyway, potential energy is worthless if it's not used. So you have all this energy pent up inside of you. If you don't go expend it, it's still going to be there. So expending the energy through physical activity is good, or meditation, right? Whatever it is that you want to do, just make sure you're not ruminating on what caused you to be angry. That's the link that you need to figure out, and you need to separate. Remember, you get better at what you repeatedly do. So practice habits and thoughts that reflect the person you want to be. Thanks for listening. My name is Neil Wadier. Please subscribe to the podcast, join the Champion Stepdad Facebook group, jump into the conversations. I've seen a couple more in there. And it's great. I love to see you guys posting your questions, posting your situations, your circumstances. Hey, this is what's going on. And what do you guys think? That's the kind of stuff that's going to build this community. So jump into the conversations and let's talk. And it doesn't always have to be the struggles. Like, share the good stuff. Send some pictures, man. I want to see what you guys are doing. We love going camping, and the weather here in Phoenix is going to be getting much better. We're going to be going out and hitting some camping here pretty soon. I'm doing some events. Kids are doing cross country, and one's going to be starting basketball pretty soon. Let me see the pictures of the stuff you guys are doing, man. Let's share the good stuff too. let's build this community built on empathy and accountability. Empathy because being a stepdad's tough. Accountability because I get it. Being a stepdad is tough, but you chose to be here. So do it the best you can. Work on that emotional control, work on that emotional regulation, and go out there and do it better